Aloha and welcome to the first of a 6-part series on an oral history, the Speaker Calvin Say. Today's session will be on childhood years and adolescent years. I'm Dina Poma-Barnes, your host, and I have with me today Speaker Calvin Say.
Thank you very much, Dina, for inviting me over to say a few words about my past history. And I'm just honored and privileged to share with the general public at large. I was born in February 1952 first, and it coincided with the same date as my mother.
Oh, okay.
So born and raised in Honolulu, every year at the age of 6, we were sent to Hawai'i. My older sister Valerie and I used to stay with our grandparents. Our grandparents, meaning Popo and Gongon, which was a very enjoyable period of time for growing up in Hawaii. That's the early mid-50s. I can recall hitchhiking from Kauai Airport to Hanalei, and then Popo and Gongon and Uncle Polly would be there. We were all rice and taro farmers. I recall that one morning when Popo used to show me a opihi shell, which is not an opihi shell, but what we call a freshwater opihi shell hihivai. And that hihivai shell was used to transport, in the old days, opium for the Chinese workers who were part of the rice plantation. I was also very fortunate to learn a lot about the Filipino culture because there was a lot of Filipinos in Hanalei also. One of the first words I learned from the Filipinos was the word bantat.
Bantat.
Bantat is Filipino for guess what? Catfish.
Okay.
Then there's the opai, then there's the freshwater turtle. But growing up in Hanalei was such an enjoyable period of time where you began to appreciate the land. You know, the workings that you put in harvesting the taro, which was equivalent to 4 buckets, paint buckets, for 1 burlap bag of trying to, how would you say, harvest 25 bags per day, 125 bags per week.
Wow. That
we sold to Honolulu. But growing up in Hanalei was a fantastic period of my time because I got to know all the people from Hanalei all the way to the end of the road known as Haiena. And the mayor of Haiena was my grandfather's very good friend, Mr. Kalani Taihu, the mayor of Haiena. I also learned that Gung or Grandpa was a taxi driver. And I'll share a story with you which he shared with me because growing up, you know, there's not much you could do. It's only the little television or radio, and it was more outdoorsy. And he was telling me the story when we had a major tsunami warning or tidal wave warning. And he was the only taxi driver from Hanalei driving to Haiena for those families who knew him. And he would warn the families. But this story evolves whereby one evening when the tidal wave alert was going on and he was driving his taxi from Hanalei to Haiena, he picked up this beautiful lady all in white. So for about 5 to 10 minutes driving towards Haiena, he would talk to her and she would respond. And then next thing you notice, she was gone. So I said, you know, Gonggong, I think I believe you because Kauai is the oldest island on the Hawaiian island chain. And that's where the goddess of Pele always used to go and visit. After doing a lot, 5 to 6 years, I also recalled for those old timers what we called oopu. It's a freshwater fish that comes down with the big storm in the river, Hanalei River. And what Uncle Polly and I used to do that morning of the big storm and rain, we would line the banks with our net to catch the oopu. It was a very, very delicious freshwater fish that we shared with a lot of the residents. Other events that I got really excited was maybe twice a year or 3 times a year during the summer. We had the hukilau. Do you know what a hukilau is?
I don't.
Okay,
No.
That's when all the families get together and they see a big school of fish right by the Hanalei Pier, and the families would go out with maybe 3 or 4 boats to surround the fish. And on both sides would have the nets and would be pulling, huki, meaning we're pulling the nets in where the fish is coming to the shore. And with the hukilau, a lot of it was shared with the families of Hanalei to Haiena, but a great deal was sold also in the commercial market. That event really taught me a lot about sharing some of the values today. And if you respect the aina or the land, will respect you in your bountiful harvest. And that was part of just growing up in Hanalei with my popo and gongo. And I was a kolohi kid too. You know, I wouldn't listen. She would tell. Guess how we communicated. We would go out by 7:30, 8 o'clock into the taro patch. By 11:30, she would blow her conch shell.
Ah, okay.
And the conch shell meant that we were supposed to come back home, have our lunch, rest till 1:30, and get back out to finish the day's quota of 25 bags.
Wow.
Fascinating, huh?
Is this an experience you shared with your siblings? Did they also come with you?
The two boys that have grown up with me, my two sons, yes, I did take them back to Hanalei to work, have them work in the taro patch. And it was a very awkward situation for them because in the taro patch is what we call the wetland taro. Your feet would sink into the mud. And that's where they said, wow, it's so hard to walk around. There's a lot of bugs, you know, crawling up your legs, etc. But, you know, they got to experience what it was like to work in the taro patch, which I was very fortunate to have worked in the taro patch, along with trying to maintain our ditches and intakes so the water from the mountains would come into the patches to provide the water resources. After we finished, you know, pulling our, let's say, quota for the day, the 25 bags, Uncle Polly and I would go into the river, known as the Hanalei River. And in the Hanalei River, we had our Samoan crab traps. Fascinating. We would catch the tilapia, use that as a bait, and then every afternoon or twice a week or 3 times a week, we'd go and check the traps. Once in a while, you would see this mullet jump in the river, and we had a throw net ready and available to go and do the throw net over the mullet. But it was a very, very, I would say, fascinating and sustainable way of life. We're not rich, we're not poor. One thought I could share with you, Dina, which I can recall, was when my cousin and I, Tony, when we had some free time, would stand by this beautiful frontage of Vanda orchids that was cultivated or grown by the Ninamoto family. And have you heard of these stretch outs? Those are the trade wind tour stretch out cars. Well, they would stop in front of the Vanda orchids, in fronting the road, and my cousin and I would dance the hula. I would sing and he would dance, and then we'd ask, "Can you throw money?" But that was, you know, growing up, and you know, penny, a nickel, that was great.
And that's how you paid for college.
After that, no. After you know, getting my experience 6, 7 years, you know, growing up already, 10, 11, I used to sell Lineup. Lineup is a football newspaper with the lineup of the football teams, the players and their positions, and that was at the old Aloha Stadium. I also was a delivery boy for the advertiser. What else did I do? I did a lot of things just to try to earn some income, right? At the old Honolulu Harbor, where you had the Matson lines, we used to dive for coins in Honolulu Harbor.
Wow.
And the thing that you would do is that once you get the coin underneath, right, you put it in your mouth underwater and then go up and say, more, more, more. You know, and that's the kind of stuff I used to do when I was growing up. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My mother is a Jim from Palama, and my father is from the island of Kauai. They both, well, not both, just Dad migrated from Kauai to Kalihi and stayed with his friends, not friends, but his auntie and uncles. And he worked at the, what you call, Pearl Harbor. And Mom graduated from Farrington High School, and she worked at the U.S. Army for close to 50-something years as a procurement officer at Fort Shafter. So I do have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. They're both doing fine. And some of the pictures will reflect that. But overall, it was an exciting time in my life.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about your Chinese background and ethnicity and things that are unique to your culture?
Well, I think Popo and Gongo and my parents really instilled in me the values of filial piety, respecting your elders, respecting everyone that come across you. And Popo used to do that in ways that I was just impressed, because she was an excellent cook. And she would always cook for the neighbors and families during the Chinese New Year's and during the different holidays that occurred. We had a, I would say, not a furnace, but a burner where you could hang your pig. And I still recall going to the pig pen and carrying the slop and the hono hono grass, mixing it together, throwing it in, and having the pigs eat it. Looking for bullfrogs. I went bullfrog hunting in Hanalei also. And the Chinese values really instilled in me as far as the nuclear family, holding everything together, and having, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the whole family together as one. Today in society, I think most of us are at a point where it's hard to get everyone at the dinner table because of all the different activities and events that are going on. But overall, my parents and grandparents really structured a value. And the value for me was the respect. The respect for the elderly, the respect for individuals. And I took really a sense of it when I got to meet more and more of our Hawaiian community people. One good example is an individual that influenced me a lot, and that was Pilahi Paki. She was Mrs. Aloha, A-L-O-H-A. And the thought was that, Calvin, you don't look at Dina in the superficial, the exterior, but you look at her in the interior, her spirit. It is her spirit that you are befriending. And that's why she always said to be open to everyone. If a person needs a bottle of water today, offer it. If a person needs a coin from you, just give it. And never think about what it's for. You're doing it because of you wanting to do it in appreciation of the spiritual relationship that that person has with you. And that's another thought that really affected me, because the next part of my life, I will share with the audience that after graduating from high school, I worked as a dishwasher for 2-3 years, and then on to a bus boy for another 17 years. And it wasn't the money per se, but understanding that every job here in society has a major role to play in order for society to succeed. If you don't have the janitor, if you don't have the custodian, who's going to clean your toilet? Who's going to clean your bathroom, right? All of this really got me thinking about how important every profession, every job is. And you should value what the person is doing, even though you may look down upon it, but it's a job that somebody has to do. And I hope the general public understands that you should appreciate that person doing that job. And that was part of the values that I was very fortunate to be raised. The thought of, you know, saving a lot of money so that you could have the American dream of buying your own home someday. And that was the focus of both my wife and I as far as our careers. So yes, the Chinese values have played a major part, but in essence, we're losing it also. You know, with my marriage of a Japanese girl, the intermarriage has not diluted the values, but more in terms of the understanding of what your roots are, of where you came from. And that's where I really feel bad for my 2 sons, because the years of my adolescence were one of the best years in growing up here in the state of Hawaii, compared to what it is today.
So speaking of adolescence, I know you were a crusader. You went to St. Louis all-boys Catholic school.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about those years and what it was like going to an all-boys school here in Hawaii?
There must have been a purpose or reason of why I went to St. Louis, and one of the reasons is that coming from Pololo Valley, it was a rough neighborhood. And going to Pololo Elementary, on to Jared Middle School, and then on to St. Louis, I truly believe that with my parents' support and the support of many others, when I went to St. Louis, it was a changing of Calvin Say's lifestyle or behavior. I miss my friends in Pololo housing, the roughnecks, etc. But at St. Louis, let me share this with the general public at large. I was never an angel. You know, I could use the word kolohi. I could use the word that I was, how would you say, feisty young man, very small. But I needed the discipline. The discipline to focus your values, your attention of where you would like to be. And I'm very honored and privileged because the brothers really helped me. You know, coming from a public school, going to a private school, paying $800 in tuition, that's a lot of money in the mid-60s. My first 2 weeks I almost got kicked out. The first 2 weeks I bought stolen books from my classmate at half price. Everybody bought, so everybody got caught. And I thought, gee, going to a private school, they'll provide the books, etc. And, you know, it was never intentionally. It's just that he went to each of the classmates to ask, would you like to buy a biology lab book, and a lot of us did. We didn't know that he was stealing it from the bookstore until he got caught. The second event that almost cost me my dismissal occurred 2 weeks later, where I let my friend my identification card. Because at St. Louis, most of the dances were private, meaning it was open to the private school girls and public school girls, but not to the young men of the public and private schools.
Better
Only
ratio.
St. Louis. Yep. Ratio, yes. You know, I tell my mother and father, who since passed away, and my wife, gee, one of the most discomforting events that happened to me that I was disappointed at myself and frustrating was the day when I graduated. In our diploma, you have two sides of one in appreciation of the school and your diploma. It's a certificate. I did not get a certificate of appreciation of the school because I was on the borderline of being expelled. But I did get a picture of the St. Louis Oval. If you ever been to St. Louis High School, there's an oval. And that's where I used to do gardening every Saturdays after cross country or wrestling. And that was part of the penalty that I was asked to do this type of work. And that kind of stuff really instilled me to think about what is right, what is wrong, you know, how do you look at things in a different perspective. And, you know, it was fascinating at St. Louis. I was called Savage Say for a while. Why? Oh, I used to like dissect animals, from the cats to the mice to the rabbits, you know, and not putting them back together. That's how they got me to call, because some of them couldn't even, you know, do that surgery on these type of animals that we're doing. The brothers had a major influence on me, which I'm very privileged. How courtesy and how respectful they were of the students. They wanted you as a son of St. Louis to succeed, and they would try their very best. And a lot of my classmates today are very successful individuals that I'm just proud of, and we just want to give back now to the community. So St. Louis for 3 years, from sophomore, junior, senior year, you know, it was a great time also. But I also had a club, a YMCA club with all of my friends from Olelo Valley. And that used to split my time with my classmates at St. Louis and my family friends and good friends in Olelo Valley. But other than that, I can't complain. If it wasn't for the brothers, maybe I wouldn't be here today.
Is there a special one that you particularly remember?
One of the brothers that I really appreciated was this brother known as Brother Plyman. He was my geometry teacher. And every time we had tests and examinations, we had it all in a blue book. And Brother Plyman was so nice to me, because when I was trying to figure out the answer to the problem, he would look over my shoulder and then hit you behind the back. Mr. Say, this is the correct answer, so move on. And you know, that's the kind of stuff. He was really, really thoughtful, and I was really appreciative. And he was such a great brother, because as a sophomore, we had the best state high school basketball team in the state for 2 consecutive years. It was the sophomore year and my junior year. Guess what? I didn't know how to go into the games because I didn't buy any basketball tickets, but he would let me in through the ticket gate and squeeze me in and just tell, you know, Mr. Say, you stand on the side of the wall and you can watch the game. And that's the kind of stuff really got to me. Brother Farrell, he was my disciplinarian. He did the Saturday chores with me, with other classmates now, not just myself, with other students, you know, who had broken some of the rules of the school. And Brother Farrell was my religious teacher, who had a great influence in just being a calm person, being very mellow and directing you in a certain way and path. Those two brothers really stood out. Brother DeMatos, my French teacher, oh, he's the one that caught my friend with my ID card. So he wasn't too happy about that. But overall, you know, the brothers of St. Louis have done a great job as far as educating the young men of St. Louis.
Would you say it was a pivot point in your life, your high school years, kind of when you really transformed? Or, because I know just a few years later you became a legislator, which I don't want to get into too much now because it'll be a next segment. But
yeah, it did have some influence. And the influence that I saw was when I ran for student class officer, I looked at myself more of those who were the nerds, the jocks, not the intellectual ones. And my classmate Bobby Chong, who's one of the leading attorneys here in the state of Hawaii, Ayabe Chong, etc., ran for president. I ran for the vice president, representing our nerds and our jerks and so forth, and the athletes. And in bringing the class together, that was really an accomplishment. The intellectuals, the gifted and talented, and just the regular guys who would go to Third Road in the old days. We call it Third Road, where they all used to smoke cigarettes and hide from the brothers and the lay people. It was just great times. And then on the weekends, we have our YMCA club, and my classmates from Pololo, all went to Kaimiki High School. They would check out the scene. If the girls were beautiful in the club, they would all stay. If they were so and so, okay, But I said to them, no. They invited us, and I think we all should, as young men, to attend dance, and let's dance with them to have a great time. But in those days, we were all rascals. And I think for St. Louis, it really disciplined me to find that balance, to be focused. So after graduation, I went right into the university. But I tell a lot of high school students today that, in the 60s, late 60s and 70s, Mr. Say used to cry. Why? If you recall, we had the draft, the Vietnam War. And if you didn't go to school, you'll probably get drafted. Or you had to enlist. I was fortunate to have, gotten into the university right after high school. But these are just some of the events that molded my values, my outlook on what life is all about.
Any pieces of advice or activities or events that you participated in, either your childhood or in high school, that really kind of formed or impacted you in your professional life or personal life in the future, that you can maybe pass on, or anything that you wish you would have done that you maybe didn't have a chance to do during those years?
I think every event that affected me had something to do with it. Growing up in Honolulu for 6 years in the summer brought a better appreciation of the Aina. Coming back to Honolulu as a teenager focused my attention on, how much we have to generate as far as resources for the family to pay for the tuition. And these were things that I looked at as part of the overall growing up process. And there were a lot of people who contributed to my success. My success is not just Calvin Say, but everyone who had an impact on me. Yeah.
And you're still pretty active with St. Louis High School, is that right? At the alumni board?
Not with the alumni board, just with our class.
Oh, okay.
The St. Louis class of 70.
Okay, and that's the district that you represent.
Yes, I do.
For the past 37 years.
Yes.
Okay. If you were to pick 3 words to describe yourself as a child or teenager, what words would you use?
I was small.
Okay.
I was a rascal.
Okay.
But I also had an appreciation of people, respect.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much, Speaker, for sharing those stories.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of just sharing part of what my life was during those adolescent days.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And thank you, viewers. I hope you join us next time. We're going to look at Speaker Calvin Say's young adult years, college years, and as well as when he met his wife, Cora, which is also a very interesting story. I hope you'll come to join us. Mahalo.